Hey everybody, this is Leanne from Of Love and Shiplap and the founder of Sublimation Graphics and Tutorials here on Facebook. If you're joining us on YouTube, please be sure to come join our Facebook group where all of our videos air live before they are added to our channel unedited. And of course, if you're catching us live on Facebook, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you'll be able to find our videos after they are live in our neatly organized playlists. Those links are in the video description depending on where you're watching. Today's design tutorial is going to be how to turn any font into a doodle looking font in Affinity Designer. Now, I know that you guys have been really interested in learning this and it's so much easier than you can probably imagine, so I'm pretty excited to show it to you. Doodle fonts are fun and creative and give you a lot of versatility for something you can add to different styles of designs all year round. In addition to that, if you've properly licensed all of the different tools that we'll use today, you have the ability to resell your Doodle fonts as flattened PNG alphabets for customers to use in their own digital designs. The steps that we'll be using today are pretty much the same if you are going to be using a program like CorelDRAW, Photoshop, or GIMP. And you may need to make some modifications if you are using a program like Silhouette or Cricut because the same features that we'll be using are not natively going to be available. Of course, if you're using a roster program like Procreate, you would pretty much be able to hand draw everything. And this tutorial is really geared towards working with not having any kind of a stylus or pen to hand draw things. So before we get started in Affinity Designer on a Windows laptop, I just want to show you some of the things that we're going to be using today. There are two different brushes that I absolutely love, which you can use in Affinity Designer. Both of these brush kits that I'm going to show you have vector brushes and raster brushes. So if you're familiar with the idea of Photoshop and Illustrator, Affinity Designer has created a program that has both in one. The introduction to Affinity Designer video is linked in our description as well, but I will just show you very quickly that we have two different personas at the top, the Pixel persona and the Designer persona. We're going to be working in the Designer persona today, which is your vector editing part of this program. The Pixel persona would be ideal for anything that you want to sketch or freehand because that is our roster program, roster part of Affinity Designer. So these brushes work in the vector section, which is great because we're going to be using them to apply outlines. You can, of course, use these freehand if you're using the Pixel persona in Affinity Designer and if there are raster brushes available. So I've linked both of these brushes in the video description. The first is this comic book brush from Frankentoon. I probably use these brush strokes in my vector brush platform more than any other brush. I don't use them so much in the Pixel persona, but that's just because there are so many other brushes available for roster artwork than there is for vector work. But I absolutely love the vector brushes and I use them all the time. And quite honestly, for $2, you really can't beat it. The second is the tattoo art brushes, which are available on the Affinity Designer website. This is another one of my favorites. It has so much versatility that you can choose from. You can see the different brushes that are listed here, and it includes sprays. The stippled shading is available in the roster persona, while these different brush strokes are available in the vector persona. And it does actually tell you exactly what is being included so that you know. In addition to those, we're going to need some sort of a fun and funky font. Now, Doodle fonts that you see, if they're not actually being each letter hand-drawn, you can make them from just about any font, but the best ones are going to be something that's playful. So today I've picked this Biber Beard Playful Rounded font, which is available on Creative Fabrica. I have a Creative Fabrica membership, and I have to tell you, it's probably the best money I spend. The main thing I download from here is fonts, and digital papers. And I use so much of all of that across all different types of designs that I work on. I highly recommend it, and I have linked that referral link, the affiliate referral link for our group for this product in our video description and the membership should you choose to join up. What's really important anytime that you are choosing a font or digital paper or anything like that is to make sure you understand the terms of use. On sites like Creative Fabrica, the terms of use are universal to all products that are listed on the website, regardless of who is creating them. Designers understand this, and if they have an issue with the terms of use that are stated for the website, they simply would not choose to offer their product on this platform. You can find the license easily by just scrolling to the bottom and clicking on subscription license or single sales license. It's actually the same for both. So we'll click on subscription license, and I'm just going to highlight very quickly what's included. I like that Creative Fabrica makes it very easy for you to see what you're allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do. Now, of course, we have what talks about your physical uses. And since we're going to be using our fonts, you can add them as quotes, words, names, saying on physical products, as well as part of digital designs. If we scroll down here to the digital products, it lets us know that we're allowed to do that. Also, because we're going to be modifying this so much by adding additional outlines and a fill and exporting it as a PNG, we'll be able to sell it as an end product, individual flattened files. It's very important that they're flattened. It even says that right here. All designs must be flattened. This is why anytime you purchase a digital design, you see that it is flattened PNG, because the idea is not to have anything where someone can extract the elements from it. So when we make this letters today and you export it and do your whole alphabet, you are going to make sure that it is flattened so that they can't pull out the original letter, the digital paper, anything like that. That's the whole purpose of selling digital graphics as a flattened PNG. We're going to be doing a pretty in-depth video coming up soon to help everyone better understand licensing and creating your own designs, but I did want to make sure to cover that today since we will be using elements that have been licensed through Creative Fabrica. So let's head back over to our Affinity Designer program and get started. We'll start by going to File and then New. Typically, if I'm creating something like a letter, I just go ahead with my general square design preset, which I created, which is 5,000 by 5,000 pixels. You can make your workspace as big or small as you want. Just make sure that you set a minimum of 300 DPI in your menu. If you need help setting up your custom presets, please refer to our Intro to Affinity Designer video, which covers all of this for you. We don't need margins, so I'm just going to uncheck that. And we always want to make sure that we have a transparent background. You can also choose to create this as an artboard if you want to create a single design workspace for every single letter and keep it in one file. I prefer not to do that, so I'm just going to create it as a new document. Next, we'll select our text tool. You can click and drag to make your text any size that you want. And then we can choose our font from our drop-down menu. As I mentioned, we're using this Biber Beard font. And I'm just going to go ahead and type the letter B. Now I always like to resize these as big as I can get them and center them on the page. I'm going to double click on the name in our layers panel, and I'm going to rename it just so it's easy for you guys to follow along. So this is going to be our base layer. We want to actually duplicate this 2 or 3 more times. So I'm just going to duplicate it twice, and then I'm going to rename this because these are going to be outlines. I'm going to name them Outline 2, and then the one above that, Outline 1. Currently, these are all black, so they're blending in. So we're going to go ahead and fix that by clicking on our color tool. I'm going to remove the color from our Outline 1, have it selected. And our filled circle is the fill color. Our outline is the outline color. So we're just going to we're going to do, I think, a Halloween one today. So we'll actually make this particular outline in black. And what we're going to do, I'm going to uncheck these just so you can see them. So unchecking will make those no longer visible. So you can see it's very hard to see our outline at the moment. We can fix that by clicking on our stroke panel and then increasing our stroke size. Now in the stroke panel, you have a few different options. You'll see that you have style written here. If we were to select no style, we would have no outline. If we select the straight line style, we have the straight line outline. If we choose the dotted, we have a dotted outline. And with the dotted outline, you can actually modify it by changing the spacing and the line weight here. So if we did 3 for our line weight and 2 for our spacing, we would see that our lines have been updated. This is actually a great technique if you want to make stitched applique looking letters. And I will definitely do that as another tutorial because I have a really cool stitch letter font that has little sewing stitches, which you can use to accent this. You can also choose a brush style, and this is where those brushes that I just showed you that work in our vector persona are going to come in handy. Now, Affinity Designer already comes with a selection of brushes, which are all of these ones: watercolors, oils, paints, pens, pencils, inks, gouaches, engraving, dry media, and acrylics. You could absolutely work with these, and you can choose any different style that you want. While these are great options, I really personally prefer the 2 brushes that I showed you already. One being the Frankentoon comic book inks. So I'm going to select the first one of that. And then the second being the tattoo art brushes, which I'll use for our next layer. So we're going to leave this at black, and if we wanted to increase the weight of our stroke, we would do so by simply modifying our slider. So now let's select our second outline. We're going to recheck that box so that it's visible. We're going to click on our color circle, our filled circle, and hit no fill. We're going to click on the outline and give this a new color. I think we'll go with orange since we're kind of going for something Halloween-y today. And then we're going to go ahead and create a line stroke. So you can kind of see it coming through our black. Just so it's easier for you guys, I'm going to uncheck that first layer again so you have a better visual. Once again, we'll select the textured line style, which is identified by this little brush stroke, and then we'll click over to brushes and we'll choose a brush. I mentioned that I really do like the tattoo art brushes from Affinity Designer. I believe the company is called Artfix. And we'll go ahead and select. I like these because they give that look of something that has been hand drawn and has, a little bit of warbliness to the line. Kind of zoom in so you guys can see just a hair better. It kind of gives some of that warbliness to the lines and some spacing. So that's just something I really like about that. And then last, we want to fill our base letter, and we can also choose to apply an outline to this as well. But first, I'm just going to recheck it so we can see it. And I'll make the color kind of a gray. And then we'll recheck our first outline. Now, obviously, our outlines are overlapping. This is actually completely fine, but it's not quite the doodle look that we're going for. So all we're going to do is select our first layer, the outline one, and we're going to shift it just a little bit. You always notice that doodle fonts have that little bit of shift. And this is how you achieve that. And then we can do the same with our second layer, shifting it in the other direction. Now, we want to give our base letter an outline too, just so that this all kind of fills in the way we're hoping it will. So we'll click on our outline, and let's go with green. We may change these colors throughout the tutorial. I didn't really plan this. So for now, we'll do the green. And maybe we'll make that one just a little bit thinner so it's not so strong. And again, you could keep this as a straight line if you choose. You could do a dotted line, or you can head over and choose another brush, which I think that's what I'll do. And we'll just choose a different one of these tattoo art brushes and maybe just bring that stroke down a little bit because it does seem really strong. Now you can fill your letter You could click on your fill circle and you could choose any color that you wanted for this, or you can fill it with a digital paper. Now, I think that filling it with a digital paper is such a great idea. But the options are always to do gradient fills, digital papers, draw your own paper and incorporate it. You really have a lot of options. And we'll be doing a tutorial on how to fill pattern your text next week so that you can see all the different options that are available and how to work with them. So to add a digital paper and fill the inside of this, we're just going to go ahead and click on our Place Image tool. And I'm going to click on my digital papers file, and you can see I have tons of digital papers that I have downloaded from Creative Fabrica. Let's click on the Halloween one and see what we've got in here. There's something that will work for today. We'll see how this stripe one is. Hopefully it's not too ugly. So you want to click and drag once you see that little portal. All right. Now to fill this into our letter, what we're going to do is we're going to make sure it's selected in our layers panel. And if you can always click on this to change it. So we'll do so that we, know which layer we're touching. So we'll click on our pattern. And to bring it into the letter, to fill the letter, you're just going to drag it and hover it over the name. So we're hovering it over where it says base letter B. Okay? If you just watch the screen, I'm going to do it one more time. And that's how you fill it. You have to hover it over where it says the actual name. Now, I'm going to drag it back out really quick. If you try and drag it underneath, and you'll notice that you have that long rectangle faded space in our layers panel, that's letting you know that you're going to be moving it below it. So this just means it's another layer in your design instead of actually filling. And then if you drag it in between the letter icon and the word base letter, where you see that little vertical rectangle that's been created, this is just going to clip your pattern to the shape that you've set up instead of filling it. So that's how you kind of navigate that. And if you just, drag it around, you can see all that. All right, so we're going to, once again, click and drag it so it hovers over where it says base letter, and that will automatically apply it to our fill. Now, the color of our letter gray is not really working for me for this design. So let's see how it would look if we added maybe black. I think that that is definitely a lot better. But now we can see that our outlines are blending in a little too much with our pattern. So we'll just go ahead and modify those. I think that the green that we're using on our base letter for the outline is a good choice. So we'll leave that one. Our second outline orange, though, is blending in a little too much. So I think we need to try something different. Since purple fits well with Halloween, I think that that'll be a good option. Now the black one we could leave, but I think maybe that one might have been better if it was a nice bright orange or even a yellow. But I think we're going more towards orange. Yeah, there we go. So now we have a base letter to work with. Next, we want to add some little accent lines. Now, this is another thing that if you really like using an iPad, it's a lot easier to draw them in. But since we're not using an iPad today, we're just going to work with our pen tool. So anytime you see a doodle font, there's little hatches and sometimes there's little zigzags, and those are the kind of things that we want to create. So we'll start by creating a little zigzag. With our pen tool. And if I zoom in so you can see this a little bit better. So this will be our first one. We're going to click over on our stroke and once again select that textured line style. We're going to add a little bit of weight so we can actually see it. And then we'll click on brushes and we can choose any of our brushes to create a line. Now I find that the comic book inks are perfect for just this. And the reason why, if we unclick, is because it gives it that doodly look. We're also going to want some straight ones. So, or, we can curve them a little bit. So I'm just going to draw a straight line and repeat the same process. Click on the stroke panel, select the textured line style brush, give a little bit of weight, click on brushes, and then choose one of our comic book brushes. And you can always adjust the weight if you feel like it's a little too much. Also, once you create any kind of a line, you can select the node tool if you would like to modify that line. So maybe you want it curved. We can do the same thing over here, kind of curve that a little bit. And this is really just clicking and dragging on the line. That allows you to play around with it. So let's zoom back out. Now you can create as many of these as you want. You can make them big, small, long. It's completely up to you. I just wanted to give you a general idea. So now we're going to just apply these onto our design. I would like my little hatch marks to be in 2, so I'm going to right click and duplicate that. And then we'll just kind of move it over. And we can group that by right clicking and grouping after we select both. And put that over there like that. And you can actually duplicate and add these all around. So if we right click and duplicate that little set, we can throw some in here maybe. And you can even choose to change the line weight or designs, the line weight, color, or brush as you're going around. So if we put this one here and maybe this particular brush stroke that we were already using isn't what we want, so we'll just click on our brushes again and we'll choose a different one. So there's a different one. And if we wanted to make that yellow, we could make it yellow. If you wanted to add another zigzag, you can hit duplicate and move that. And you could even shrink it down maybe. When it comes to doing this, there's really no right or wrong way to get your doodle font going. The main point here is that when you make these little accent marks, you're just kind of making them to add a little bit of personality to your font. Now, normally I would make a whole bunch of different ones, but since we don't want this tutorial to take forever, I'm just going to kind of move around where I think they'll fit. Maybe we'll flip that one. There we go. To something like that. And I think we can always use an extra hash mark. So we will right click and duplicate that one and put that one down there. Now, again, you can change the color, you can change the line weight like I showed you, or you can go ahead and use that pen tool and create additional lines. This is, of course, where it does come in handy if you are using an iPad, because you can quickly draw those lines and let them be completely freehand. But this tutorial, like many of our tutorials, is really geared towards people who are not using a tablet and don't have drawing ability. So now we have our base letter ready to go for our doodle font. So because we want to save this, we're going to go ahead and export it. The exporting process is important. If you plan to use these in your own designs or resell them digitally, you want to make sure that you have a transparent background, and you're going to go to File, Export. Make sure that you have selected a PNG, and then you have 2 options here. You can select Whole Document, which is what we're already set on, and then you would just go ahead and hit Export, and I'll just move it here. But a nice thing to do for your customers that definitely helps them is to click and drag all of your layers and then do File, Export, and select Selection Without Backgrounds. And the reason why you will do this is because it will eliminate all of this dead space around your letter. Now, I don't need to export this twice, so I'm just going to hit Cancel. Even beyond this, you could go ahead and incorporate clip art and add other elements to your letters if you chose to. So maybe we wanted to add a bat to this, we would be able to do that, or a pumpkin. You can incorporate clip art to that. And I'll actually, if I can find some really quickly, I will show that to you as well. So this isn't going to be specifically the right style for this, but since I can grab it quickly, I'll just show you. So if you wanted to add a little pumpkin to your letters like this, you could do that as well. And this is still a ready to go monogram letter once you export it. Now let's talk about making additional files. I'm sure that you don't want to go through all of those steps all over again to make every single letter, which is why we did everything the way that we did this. So I'm just going to move my pumpkin out of the way. And you can move all of your little hatch marks and stuff out of the way too, because you might not put them in the same place on every design. Or on every letter, sorry. Now what we're going to do is we're going to click on each of our letters. And we're going to click on the text tool. And this will allow us to change our text. So we'll just click and highlight, and then we can make this a new letter. So let's say we want to do the letter D. And you're going to repeat that on all 3 layers. The text tool is still going to be selected if you've just done it. And as you do this, it's going to keep the consistency of all the work that you just did. So that just alleviated a lot of repeat steps. Now you still might want to make some modifications. Maybe the outline needs to be shifted a little bit more on this letter, or maybe you want to change the colors because you're just feeling something different. And then you would go ahead and move all of your cute little doodle accent marks that you created, however you want them, on your design. If at any point you find that you have one that you don't want to use and you don't want it to export, you would just uncheck it in your layers panel. So I don't really want to use this one this time, so I'm just going to uncheck that one. And we can also uncheck our pumpkin. But now we're ready to export our letter D. One more time, we would just click and drag to select everything that's on the workspace, hit File, Export, choose Whole Document without selection. Always make sure you're in a PNG format, and then hit Export. And go ahead and save it. As you can see, turning any font into a doodle font is a lot easier than you probably thought. It's a fun and creative way to add a unique accent to your digital designs and create a product that you can resell. As I mentioned in the beginning, always make sure you're abiding by the license terms that are provided wherever you happen to be licensing your fonts or your digital paper. So if you happen to download fonts from freebie websites, typically the terms of use do not include this. And I'm referring to font websites like DaFont and 1001 Fonts and things like that. When you download freebies that are available on sites like Creative Fabrica or Font Bundles or designbundles.net, the terms of use licensing that's provided still applies to those as well, even though they are just free for that week. I hope you guys found this tutorial pretty easy to follow. This is a really fun and creative way, and I look forward to seeing your doodle fonts in action. If you have any questions, please leave them below in our video if you're catching us live on Facebook. And if you happen to be on our YouTube channel, commenting is turned off because it's too difficult for us to keep up with the group and commenting over there. So if you have questions or need assistance, please come join us on Facebook and post in our group. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your day.